Hi, my name's Rob Young. I'm one of the employees here at Swags, and I am here today with ultra marathoner extraordinaire Zack Beavin. Zack, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in running.
So I got started in running pretty early on in grade school. I ran, I think, starting in third grade, cross country in the CSAA with Holy Trinity, and did other sports, but cross country and track was always kind of my favorite. Had great coaches. Tom Knoll, my mom helped coach, and so just ran the Louisville Triple Crown races here in Louisville, and then just kind of fell in love with the sport from there.
Good. So. Tell us a little bit about your high school and college careers.
So yeah, then going into high school, I was in a fairly successful program with some great coaches.
Thank you.
Including Rob Young here, Coach Medley, Coach Myrose, Coach No, Coach Yoakum, just, a huge staff of really supportive and influential people. I think we won 2 cross-country state titles during my time there.
I think that's right.
Yeah, set a 4x800 state record with a group of great guys I'm still friends with. And high school experience was awesome. And then, only furthered my love for the sport and the process, and learned how to work hard in that environment and how to, commit to a goal and train for it and execute. And so
good. What about college?
So then college, I actually committed to Belmont University. Ran for Belmont for a year and then transferred to University of Kentucky after a year just for academic reasons. And then finished out my 4 years in the SEC running for UK. The college career didn't go, phenomenally well. I ran some halfway decent times like 14:30, 5K, 30:30, 10K, but it was never anything really, to write home about. Definitely not what I thought I could achieve in the sport, in college. Not the kind of times I wanted to run, not the kind of, placings in conference championships and that sort of thing I wanted to do. But, had a great time running in college again.
It's interesting. You mentioned the 4x8 at the state championships. I just saw the replay of that Thomas Cave put on Facebook. That was 9 years ago.
That was 9
years ago.
That's
this past
insane.
week. Yeah.
My favorite thing about that is if you watch the video, you can see Coach Medley in the stands jumping up and down. Mm-hmm. And I think he turns and high fives Coach Carter. So,
I'm sure he was excited.
Yeah.
Tell us about your Olympic trials marathon.
So yeah, then moving out of college, I started to focus on the marathon. I always kind of had a notion that I wanted to run the longer races, because it was always frustrating for me that I didn't have that top-end speed that people like Thomas Cave, our illustrious anchor on the 4x8, had. So whenever we do anything short, like mile races or even 2-mile races, 800s, people would just leave me, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't think through it. I couldn't change anything about that because I just don't have that gear. So
you only do what you can do.
Yeah, you can only run so fast. So then, coming out of college, I was excited that I've always been a really strength-driven runner. So I was excited to run the marathon just because that's a much more strength-based event, and spent 2 years kind of perfecting that craft, learning how to attack and approach the marathon. Ran 2:18 in Indianapolis, I think the fall of 2018. Yeah, fall of 2018, ran 2:18, punched my ticket to the Olympic trials. And then ran the Olympic trials in Atlanta right before the world shut down for COVID. And I'm glad we got that in right before COVID because it was an awesome experience. I've never been in an environment like that, either from like an athlete perspective or a crowd perspective. Just the combination of like the sound echoing off the buildings along with, I definitely went out too fast, but I was just caught up in, the energy of the event. Running, through the streets of Atlanta with that like deafening noise from the crowd. Everyone's Garmin going off like at 5:02 for the first mile, like in a pack of like 70 guys. It was a really cool experience.
Yeah. If I remember right, it was kind of windy that day. Wasn't the weather kind of
it was insanely,
a challenge?
Yeah. The weather was difficult, and I was actually not in great fitness for it. I'd run into a couple injury issues. It was nothing like that I could have, I don't think, really prevented. I just kind of picked up some knickknacks right at the wrong moment. So I was actually kind of walking around the hotel trying not to limp, pretending like everything was fine. But it really wasn't, in the top physical shape for it. But I was just there to, I was happy to be there for the experience.
Nobody can take that experience away from you.
No, not at all. And I was like never even remotely in the conversation of, top
I
20.
think I saw a
top
glimpse
3.
of you on TV.
Yeah, exactly. So I was there. I was
Yeah.
there to be there,
Yeah.
and I did what I wanted to do, and it was a great experience.
Good. Tell us about Tunnel Hill and Strolling Jim Ultras.
Yeah. So even with the marathon, I still kind of experienced that same frustration, in that to a certain degree, there's only so much you can do. So, strength and speed are definitely intertwined. I don't have a lot on the speed side, and so when some guys are going out running, 5:06s, 5 flats for the marathon, that's just, I have the strength in the marathon, but I don't necessarily have the speed to where I can make that sustainable.
Yeah.
So just started looking towards longer and longer races when I could really take advantage of the strength that I know that I do have as a runner. Which led me to stuff like Tunnel Hill 50, which is a flat, fast 50-mile race. Every time I've run 6-minute pace, since I was a kid, I've always felt like this is just such a fluid, fun, sustainable pace. I've always felt like I could just run 6-minute pace forever. And at 50 miles seemed like the perfect distance to test that out. So went out and ran Tunnel Hill 50 with the goal in mind of breaking 5 hours, which is a nice round, 5 consecutive 10-mile runs at 6-minute pace, 1 hour each. Just the structure of it really, kind of tickled me and spoke to me, and ended up falling off the last 7 or 8 miles and ran 5:03, but it was the 4th fastest American 50-miler ever run by an American. That is, I think Jim Walmsley has run several that are faster than that, but in terms of individuals, I'm now the 4th fastest, at least for now. But yeah, it was
Until you run the next one.
Well, maybe, yeah. I do want to get back to the 50-miler at some point, because I do think I have a sub-5 in me, which that's one of those, I was never fast enough to have the sub-4-mile thing even remotely, tempt me, because I'm just not fast enough. But the sub-5 50-miler, that seems something that in running circles, a lot of people can easily wrap their brain around, because they can kind of quickly do the
Right.
10 miles an hour, 5 of them. Wow.
Yeah, the math is easy.
Yeah, the math
on
is
that.
easy. So I'm at some point I want to get back and run another 50, maybe a road 50, because Tunnel Hill is crushed gravel like you'd get at Tom Sawyer, which is nice from a doesn't beat you up perspective as much as it would be running on the road for 5 hours. But I definitely think there's a couple seconds per mile that's lost just by doing that. Yeah. So I think if I can get to a really fast road 50, I might actually have sub-5 in me, which would be a cool thing just to, put on my resume and just say I've done this. And
It's becoming a lengthy resume. What about Strolling Jim?
So Strolling Jim was another one of those that always kind of, tickled my brain in the right way, that just kind of took hold deep in my brain and wouldn't let go until I at least aged out of the sport or set the course record. So it's a 41-mile ultramarathon in Tennessee road race over some really nasty hills and terrain, which kind of spoke to me both from a distance perspective, and I've always been a strong cross-country runner. And to me, it seemed like a really long road race with cross-country style road race. So kind of the opposite of a Tunnel Hill. So no rhythm to be found at all there. So it's a racer's course. You attack the course when it lets you, and you back off when it doesn't let you attack it. So I heard about the race, I think in 2018, from John, of John's Run Walk Shop where I work in Lexington. He had run the race several times back in the, I think, 80s and 90s. It's, I think, the 4th oldest ultra in the country. And he talked about the race and how great it was and this amazing course record that was there. And I did some research and saw that.
So it's been the same course for all those years?
It's been the same course for all those years, yeah. So there's some really remarkable history with it. You get this pre-race packet, and in the pre-race packet, there's the top 10 splits of every, the 5-mile mark, the 10-mile mark, the 15-mile mark from the past 43 years or something. And that sort of thing, I don't know. I really like the history behind it. And so that spoke to me even more, just the history there.
And that was I don't know if you mentioned, but that was a 30-year-old record. That's
Yeah, so the record
incredible.
was 1991, which was a few years before I was born. And yeah, I kind of did the mental, I've gotten to the point where I know myself athletically well enough where I can kind of project a certain effort out in my mind to see if it would be doable. And it was like, yeah, 5:48 pace for 41 miles over some pretty, rolling hills. It's like, that's like right on the edge, but I think I could do that. So it took me, from learning about it to actually doing it this past spring, took me 3 years, but it was always in the back of my mind as something I wanted to take a crack at. So
You cracked it all right.
yeah, no, it was. It was good.
So what's your training process for these ultras?
So I actually work with Dave Long, who I think you're familiar
Very
with,
familiar
from
with, yeah.
former athlete. His dad, Brian, was a multi-time state champion, wasn't he?
In cross, he was one-time state champion.
Okay.
Track, I'm not sure about
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Had to go back and look.
Yeah, I mean, you've had so many good runners. But so Brian, a really good runner in his own right. Dave, very good runner in his own right.
Who ran with swag at
at
Western.
And so I approached him out of college, I was looking for a coach to kind of guide me through the marathon process, and I got connected with him through Chris Striegel, because Dave was helping coach at Bellarmine where Chris was running.
Right.
I ran with Chris in high school. And I kind of explained what I wanted to do in the sport, and he was like kind of starting to work with more post-collegiate athletes and agreed to take me on. And as time, we were very successful working together in the marathon to kind of learn what worked for me. And then as we've moved more into the ultramarathon side of things, it's kind of been, a give and take of, he's never coached someone who wants to run fast 50 milers or arbitrary 41-mile races through the back roads of Tennessee. So there isn't really a book out there about how to do it. So it's been a process of working with each other, talking to each other to, figure out what structure works for me to attack these races. So it's very, strength and volume based. But I also like to keep a foot in the speed door, because while I'm not fast, I think having, a foot still in that door, that world that I was brought up in through St. X and then college running, is definitely an advantage, because a lot of people who are in the ultra side of the sport come at it not from the background that I do, but they just go straight to the ultra side. So then they don't have quite as many tools in their tool set that I do. So like if there's a section in like Strolling Gym, there's a mile that's just straight downhill, and I have, the speed in my legs to just let that go. And I think I ran like a 5:20, 5:15 mile just in the middle of a 40-mile race, because I have the mechanical, muscle memory and everything to just do that. Because
that's impressive.
Yeah, I have the background in 5K, 10K, half marathon, that I can let myself do that for a mile and be fine. It's not sustainable. Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Right,
but
right.
like I have that tool that I can whip out when I need it. Whereas a lot of other people who'd be running these types of races, they don't have that background and can't necessarily take advantage of that. So
that's impressive.
Yeah, I like to have a bunch of things at my disposal. So
lots of tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
What do you think about when you're racing for 5 hours?
It's mostly kind of assessing how you feel and being just very aware of the effort that I'm putting in. People have actually asked, like, well, don't you, like a tunnel hill, don't you wish you had, like, someone to race? Because don't you think that would have brought out a better performance? And something like a marathon, that's definitely true. I would like to be in a pack of people, and with a marathon, I think you have to go a little further outside of your comfort zone than you would expect to run your best marathon. Because, 13, 14 miles in, you should be hurting pretty substantially already. And having a pack of people to just hang on to and work with was really helpful. But something like a 50-mile race, if you go in with that same mindset, I think would lead to a lot of trouble. So I prefer to do that type of stuff in Strolling Gym, alone, and not have that competition aspect to it. Just because I like to kind of look within the whole time and pay really close attention to like what I'm doing, how much energy I'm expending, how my mechanics feel, how my breathing is, just all the little details that go into it.
So you don't ever just let your mind wander and watch the nature and all that?
I mean, I'll have like moments where I'll like, see something and think, oh, that's like I saw a miniature horse and a white peacock and like stuff during strolling gym. I'd be like, white peacock, wow, that's cool. No, I need to like come back to it. So yeah, there's nothing that can really replicate that, because even like in training, you're not quite as, honed in on what's happening.
Right.
So that experience, at least for me, has only kind of come out during racing. So, and specifically ultramarathon racing, it's a very different.
What about nutrients? Do you intake anything?
Yeah, so that's another thing I've been kind of working with. I've been working with Dave a lot on that, but also I think my main consult on that front has been Dr. Scott Black, which I see you all have SWORD here. We also carry SWORD at Johns, but he was one of the co-founders of SWORD, sports medicine doctor. He was our team doctor when I ran at UK, and he's an ultramarathon runner himself, so he's been a wealth of information, and I've gone back to him several times to ask about nutrition strategies and that sort of thing. And I'm still perfecting it. But
I was going to say some of that's got to be experimental.
Absolutely,
what works and what.
I used to think I could only handle a little bit less. So like my initial like goal post was like 200 calories an hour, so like 2 goos an hour every 30 minutes, which is like a pretty normal marathon cadence. So that'd probably be like 4 goos in a marathon, which is pretty normal, what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But I've learned the more that I do it with ultras, since you're out there for so much longer, you have to pound the calories and pound the carbs. And so I've been trying to train my gut and experiment a little bit more with different types of fueling. So both like sports drink, carbs and nutrition and calories that way is also like combined with goos and gels. And I'm currently like able to process about 300 to 350 calories an hour when I'm really working hard. So that that just helps push off the inevitable bonk that's going to happen with glycogen depletion. So they're better. That's the other thing about ultras is if you don't have a good gut, you can't. Like it doesn't matter how good of a runner you are if you can't process nutrition to get it to your legs.
Have you had anything that's just sent your stomach into a?
No, thankfully, no. I have a pretty strong stomach. The only time I did have an issue was just on a training run, and I was like running down this pretty big hill, which is kind of like when I like to take in nutrition because it's a lot harder to do when you're climbing or something like that. And I pulled out a Morton gel and ripped it open, shoved the trash in my handheld bottle, and like took in like half of it and immediately almost like vomited. And then I like turned it over and looked at it, and it was expired for like a year.
Oh.
Yeah, I just found it like, somewhere. Like I have a stack of nutrition in my room that I just kind of grab when I'm going. I guess it had just worked its way through the cycle, and I didn't even notice that it had been there for that long. But yeah, that's honestly the only time I've ever had issues. So I've also kind of started to experiment like with what other forms of nutrition my body will handle. Because as I look to longer and longer races, there's a limit to how many sugary goos and how much, Morton, how much sword, how much tailwind, just the really sweet stuff that your body can handle. Because I've even noticed with like at the end of strolling gym or at the end of Tunnel Hill, like I know that I need to take nutrition and I know that once I take it in, I'll feel better. But just having so much sugar for that long, it just gets nauseating. And like as soon as you put that like 15th goo in your mouth, your stomach just wants to like reject it. But you have to get it down. And you get it down, and once it starts processing, you feel the effects. So I'm thinking as I start running longer, I want to have some variation in that, so I'm not, eating 5,000 calories and just straight goo and stuff.
It's all work in progress. Huh?
Yeah.
How do you recover after a race?
It depends on the effort.
Do you take any time off at all?
Yeah, I
took
a full week after Tunnel Hill. That was more of I felt like I'd been working really hard for a long time and that my body needed a full week to recover, which I think was, at the end of the day, really good for me. But yeah, it just depends on the severity of the event and that sort of thing. But take a day or two off and trot around for a couple of days and just listen to my body and see when it's ready to get back at it. So,
good.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to do a 100-miler at some point?
Yeah, at some point. I think anyone who runs ultras is interested in that. You know, it's kind of the gold standard of the ultra world is the 100-mile race. I think it's a little bit outside of my sweet spot. I think I could probably be a decent 100-mile runner, but I don't think it's like if you lined up my ideal races in order, I don't think it would be in the top 2 or 3. Because there's some people out there like Zack, and I've actually made pretty good friends with a guy named Taggart who lives in Illinois. He ran like the fastest debut 100 in history at Tunnel Hill, and he's looking at gunning for the world record later next month. And like someone like him, he was born to run the 100 miles, and I think I'll be okay at it. I think I can suffer through it, but I don't think I was born to run 100 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a little bit too far, a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. So,
You mentioned that you work at John's Run Shop.
Mm-hmm.
What do you enjoy most about this industry?
yeah. Well, one, the shoes. I mean, I go through a lot of shoes, and I'm a shoe nerd, and so it's just fun to work with and around shoes and just see what all these great brands are, innovating with, and because it's a fun time to be in the industry. There's so much stuff happening across, all the brands. They're all trying to outcompete one another. So it's really fun to be on like the leading edge and see it, 2 seasons in advance, just kind of know what's coming down the pipeline. But also just working with the customers. It's just fun to be able to share something that you love with them. And you sometimes forget how much you know about the sport, how much you know about the process until you start talking to someone who wants to get into it and they have no idea. And you're like, wow, like it's just fun to be able to like share something you love with them, and then call that work.
Yeah. So talk about shoes. So when you do ultra where you're on part roads, part trails,
Yeah.
what kind of shoes do you wear?
So I haven't really done an ultra that's like a hybrid situation like that.
Oh, I thought Strolling Jim was.
Strolling Jim is all road.
All road,
So
okay.
I just wore the Nike Alpha Fly for that.
Okay.
Don't think I'm ever going to wear it again because it gave me horrible, horrible blisters. And that could just be running 40 miles. But it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But for something like a hybrid situation, I actually probably need to figure that out because I'm planning on running JFK 50 this fall, which is like 13 miles on the Appalachian Trail. And then from there, you hit like a rail trail, kind of crushed gravel like Tunnel Hill, and then 8 mile for like 26 miles, and then a few miles back to town on, paved road. So the shoes that I want to wear like on the technical trail sections are not going to be what I want to wear on, the rest of the race. So I'm thinking I might need to practice like a shoe change for that because
More experimentation.
yeah, I don't necessarily also want to be running in a road shoe, like a carbon plated super shoe on the trails, just because those are great for the roads, but
Right.
as soon as you go on trails, there's just not enough. There's not enough confidence in your foot strike for the technical trails
Right.
in a shoe like that. So I'll probably have some pit crew or pit stop practice leading into that.
One last question. It's an
Yeah.
easy one.
Okay.
Are you still a Bruce Springsteen fan?
Absolutely. Maybe not as fanatical as I was in high school. I think in high school you're looking for things to like define your identity. Loved Bruce Springsteen in high school, and I think bonded with some of the coaches over that because
Yeah.
it was very much a cross-generational thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I still love Bruce Springsteen. Listened to his podcast with Obama recently, and that was
Oh, did you?
yeah, oh, that was awesome. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, Zach, thanks for being with us today, and it was a pleasure to talk to you, and best of luck in the future.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Good, good. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.